This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
Views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, we are the culprits who've encouraged you to like, share them, and subscribe on YouTube for the archives of this show. And thank you for listening live on the radio, of course, and on the TuneIn app. It's time for the African American Scene from Martin County Roofing and Independent Insurance Agent, your host, the one and only Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Always glad to be with you here on a Wednesday night. Little bit sad tonight, though.
Yeah.
After what happened yesterday, tragic. I sat there in the living room and I saw that come on and I thought about all the little kids and the tears came into my eyes.
Elementary school of all places.
Yeah, really, really, really bad. But I'm going to say, it looks like the final count is like 19. 19 total. I'm sorry, 21 total. 19 kids and 2 adults. Wow. We had 10 last week and 21 this week.
Now the suspect was also shot and killed by police. He got a couple of the cops, but they weren't serious life-threatening wounds.
Yeah.
But still, he popped the cops and they popped him back and it worked.
Yeah, in both cases they had body armor.
Wow.
Now, let me just say this to you. Because I am good and pissed about what we're doing here. We won't allow for tests, universal background tests. We won't allow for the elimination of AR-15s. Now, what 18-year-old needs an AR-15 that he bought legally? But you're okay with regulating a woman's uterus and her physical health. You willing to take that into your hands, but you won't exercise any control over guns. And I think you're gutless. You're gutless. You want to take on women, but you won't take on the gun lobby, and you won't add a little inconvenience for yourself. And you're talking to a guy that is a gun owner, and it is not offensive to me to have some regulations for the ownership of guns. It makes sense. It's the right thing to do. And we could stop some of these murders because an 18-year-old with an AR-15 is ridiculous, is stupid, and if you can make it in your heart to try to control a woman's uterus, I don't know why you can't feel the need to control an AR-15. And I'm disgusted with any of you that feel that way. You feel okay with controlling the AR-15. You don't feel okay controlling the AR-15, but it's okay to control a woman's body. Wrong. You are wrong.
A detection of a little hypocrisy out there.
Oh, my God, is it hypocrisy? And okay, and you know what? You want to call up and fight with me about it? Let's have it. Let's have it. 340-1590. 340-1590. Glad to have that argument with you. Okay? Because you want to talk about right to life. Lives are getting snuffed out for an 18-year-old that has an AR-15. That's ridiculous. Okay? Now that I got that off my chest, well, I'm going to just say to you, our situation in this country is out of control. Totally out of control. We have 120.5 guns per 100 people. 120 guns 120.5 guns per 100 people. Yes, Steve.
Hi, Rudy. I
Yeah.
agree with you. I am so pissed off at what's going on. It's unbelievable. And I'm a gun owner. I'm a gun enthusiast. But I'm also a Vietnam vet. And I know how to use it. The other thing is Florida has done some good. We have a system now in schools where if there's a violent act, they can hit a button and it notifies the police immediately. Those are the type of actions we need. Policemen on campus, doors locked, cameras. We need to know who's there. And this gun law, this is dumb. You can buy an AR-15 at 18, but you can't buy a beer in Texas at 15 or
Right.
18.
Right.
That's nuts.
It is.
That is absolutely nuts. And this guy bought 2 AR-15s on his birthday and 475 rounds of ammunition.
Right.
And that didn't raise a red flag? Come on. I don't hunt anymore, but when I did hunt, I didn't need a AR-15 to go deer hunting.
Well, you would have no deer left.
Exactly. And I mean, this has become insanity in this country.
It is. It is, Steve.
It's crazy. I'm almost 75 years old, and I've carried a gun since I was 18 for the military. And other than Vietnam, I've never had to shoot anybody or even pull it on anybody. So this is just nuts. It's political insanity
It is.
by the Republicans.
And a lot of
They're
my
the ones
friends,
that keep
a lot
blocking these
of
bills.
my friends, I would probably say most of my friends are gun owners. Not one of them would object to what I'm talking about. But
No,
instead,
absolutely not.
but here's what they do, which makes me so angry because I pounded on the table before we came on the air. They're going to say, here they come, they're trying to take our guns again. That's the
Yeah,
lie.
that's bull.
Right, you know that, right? They've
Yeah.
been saying that since Obama. They're coming to take our guns.
The other thing they say
Yeah.
is they're going to try to get your Social Security, too. They've been saying those
Yeah.
two things forever.
Yeah.
And you know, in Texas, it's just like Florida. They wanted to make a bill law that you could do open carry.
Yes.
This is not 1853 in the Old West.
Absolutely.
I
That's
mean,
what we're doing.
come on, you don't need open carry. That's an invitation to
Des-
a gunfight.
DeSantis is trying to do it too, Steve.
I know, and that's why I call him stupid. That's insanity. An
Yeah.
open gun. Can you imagine me walking down the street with my .40 caliber strapped to my hip? Now that's inviting anybody, and then I get in an argument with a neighbor,
Yep.
and
Yep.
he's got a gun.
Yep.
So come on, folks, let's get real here.
It's
If
just
if you get a gun, you should have to demonstrate that you know how to use it. You should have to take classes in it
yep.
and actually display that you know how to use that gun responsibly.
Yes, indeedy.
Other than that, go away. We don't want your business.
Yeah, my friend. I thank you, man. Always calling, making
Well,
sense.
thank you, Rudy.
Okay. All right.
Take care.
He's right. He's another gun. I know he's a gun owner. We and I have talked about it before.
Well,
It's just as crazy.
intentions have a lot to do with all of it too, but still, with the I'd say the expertise of a marksman that's been in military situations, that knows how to handle that, knows that just the average citizen not going to kill deer with it. You'd shoot one deer, and that thing would make so much noise. All the rest of the deer wouldn't be seen in that county again for a decade.
Yeah.
You think they disappear on the first day of hunting season? They'd disappear over that even quicker.
Oh yeah, I tell you, I saw a thing this morning that said that the AR-15 caused more damage to a human than the M16, which is what they used in Vietnam. I didn't know that. The bullet, as it enters from the M15, causes more damage. I didn't know that. I just heard that this morning. I
With a
didn't.
smaller bullet, it ricochets off of bones and takes a shortcut and a left turn and cuts an artery open, things like that.
But in any event, man,
Dangerous
I will
weapon.
tell you, if there's anybody, I mean, listen, we are just this gun thing we have is like so bizarre, and we are by far and away the leading murder capital of the world when it comes to guns. Why?
That's
If the argument that they're making is that a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun, why do we have so much more murders than all the other countries in the world? Why do we have more murders than all the other countries in the world?
that's a rude and strange statistic, but yeah, why? There's a reason. You know what I think? I think that our big government officials, you've got what we call the left and the right. Well, a one-winged bird won't fly in circles. They won't fly at all. You know, a one-winged bird, a left-wing only bird cannot fly.
Yeah, that's
You know,
true.
and I know sounding like Ross Perot now, but but
Yeah.
if you keep people played against each other all the time, and they never stop, and they play each other in front of us, who all we can do is watch, and then so you've got the fans that like the left and the fans that like the right, and it's tribalism, like as you've described on this show.
Yeah, yeah. it
They
is,
will
yeah.
not. There's like an 11th commandment: "Thou shalt not diss a fellow," and you put the word conservative or moderate in there.
We're in deep, deep trouble. Our country's in very deep trouble. And I have done lots of reading, as you know I'm prone to do. And I've listened to some master classes because I subscribe to that. And we're in trouble. And I'm not so worried about me because I'm on the back nine. And every year I get now is a blessing. But I sure worry for my grandkids. And we got Winnie on line one. Yes, Winnie.
How you doing, my friend?
Okay.
Good. I was so sorry to hear about the tragedy about those kids and the government and the people in Texas and
Yeah.
everything. I have a question to ask you. Did Joe Biden did Congress, did they pass the George Floyd Act bill?
They passed some. I just heard it as we were coming on the air. He passed some police reform legislation. I know he passed legislation for no-knock warrants, and I think he passed legislation for chokeholds. The Republicans wouldn't let him pass the George Floyd Act.
Why
So-
not?
They wouldn't approve it because the one thing they wanted to take out the provision in the current law that eliminates any kind of liability against the officer. They didn't want that to stay in there, and the conservatives wanted that to stay in there.
Oh. So what you think? You gonna continue or?
Well, I am really sad that he had to do what he had to do, but minorities were so angry with him that we didn't have any kind of passage of the George Floyd Act. I think he did that to try to provide some satisfaction to the minority community because that was part of the promise that he made when he was running, that he was going to get some police reform legislation in. And this is all he's been able to do, though, so far.
So it might continue on. You don't know, huh?
I don't know if he'll be able. Well, we'll know better after the election. I would say we'll have a clear picture after the election. If we are able to maintain or expand a couple of seats, especially in the Senate, then I think we can make it happen.
Oh.
Otherwise, I think it's could be a no-go.
No.
I think we have a good. I think we have a good chance of winning the Senate in Pennsylvania. So, but we'll have to see.
Democrat.
Yes.
Yeah, I went back to Democrat. Yeah, Democrat. I went back there. Okay, I'm glad Jay called you last week. I thought I said, that's Jay?
Yeah, I hadn't heard from you in a while. Yeah.
I know. One time I called you, I wanted to ask you about what happened to Jay. What happened to Jay?
Mondays happened to Jay. Mondays for a while did it to Jay. That's what I think.
Okay.
I'm glad he back. Okay, all right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. All right. Yeah. So I think, listen, Biden really had almost no choice. He was losing major support by the minority community because he was unable to do anything about police reform. And contrary to what some of you might think, the police reform problem has been going on for more than 100 years, that we have been trying to get some form of police reform for the minority community. So I don't know, he needed to do something. And he's done something, so I'm happy to see that he's at least done that. So we'll have to see. Cliff, I'm not sure. Am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, all right.
There's some callers that are on.
Okay.
We have a fellow named King would like to discuss something with you.
Okay. How are you, sir?
Good evening. How are you doing? I appreciate you taking my call. Enjoy your show.
Yes, sir.
I had a little while ago you were commenting on asking why the United States has more murders than anywhere else in the world.
Yes.
And I just wanted to clarify a couple things. One of which, the majority of gun deaths in this country are from suicides. If you look at the statistics, those are all lumped into the gun deaths in the United States. The most recent ones I looked at were from about 4 years ago, but it was 54% of the gun deaths were suicide. So you have to be careful when you talk about the number of murders. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is that murder rate, if you take it by capita, it's a lot different. And the United States does not have the most murders of any country in the world per capita. There are quite a few that have way more. And I just wanted to point those things out. The United States has, as you know, over 300 million people, and by nature of the larger population, there will be more murders. But if you look at per capita, just a little bit south of us, Honduras and El Salvador have way more murders than the United States.
I don't believe so. I got something right here I'm looking at. And you're right about the suicides. The total suicide count is slightly ahead of homicides. But
murder rate per capita per country, Honduras and El Salvador are above us.
Okay.
And I'll let you look that up.
Okay, well, go ahead.
Later. I had one more comment on the gun control.
Okay.
If the solution were more strict gun laws, it seems to me that the places with the stricter gun laws would have less murder. Does that make sense? If
Not
the solution
entirely.
to murders is stricter laws,
Not
the stricter
entirely.
law-
But here's what I'm going to say to you about that. That is a false narrative, and I'm going to tell you why it's a false narrative.
Okay.
Because stricter gun laws, if you reduce the deaths by 5%, to me, that's enormous, because life is so precious to me when it comes to losing a life by means of a firearm, that any life saved is a good life. That's productive.
I agree.
Okay, so
Well, what is the solution? Is your
I
suggestion
think,
to have
first of all,
stricter gun laws?
I think first off, the solution should be no AR-15s at all. Period. You don't need them at all. It's not a hunting rifle. So what's the purpose of having it?
Okay.
I don't think you need a 12-shot 9mm magazine. You don't need it. It's okay to have I even go to 9-shot. Why you need a 12-shot magazine for a 9mm?
And you believe that would make a difference in lowering the murder rate?
I think there's two things that would happen. Number one, we're creating a little safer environment for the police, because the police right now, as Cliff was saying to me before we went on air, the police are having a tougher and tougher time getting people to join the police department, because with all the guns out in the street, they never know what they're going to go into from 1 minute to the next. That's insanity.
Right.
So I think having a more restrictive gun law makes a lot of sense to me.
Right. I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure the difference of a 9-round clip or a 12-round clip actually lowers the murder rate, but it certainly couldn't hurt.
All right, there you go.
And I'd like to hear the 18-year-old responsible for this horrific shooting. Would you be in favor of raising the gun age to 21? It seems ironic to me that you can't buy a beer at 18, but you can buy.
Absolutely. That was what Steve had said beforehand. I would be in favor of raising that to 21. And listen, two things with that. First of all, there would not, if I had to say so, that you couldn't buy AR-15.
Right.
And I can tell you're a gun owner. What's the purpose of an AR-15? It's not a hunting rifle.
I do not own one of those, but I will say, I would be curious. I don't think the amount of murders committed in this country, I would say the small percentage are AR-15s.
Well, okay. All right. Well, let's just take a quick survey. Last Saturday in Buffalo, that was an AR-15. Yesterday was an AR-15, and the 50 people that was shot in Las Vegas was an AR-15.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree. I'm not saying they're not shot. I'm saying I think it's a very minute percentage that are murdered with AR-15s. If you're going to outlaw an AR-15, why wouldn't you outlaw handguns, which are responsible for the majority of the murders? And why stop? What about an AR-15? What about other rifles?
No, I think hunting is part of our DNA. I don't have any problem with hunting. What's wrong with that? I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not a flaming liberal that is against every firearm on the planet. I'm for common sense things. And listen, I understand firearms. There's no reason for an AR-15. It's that simple.
No, I hear you. And I'll let you go. I've taken up a lot of time. I appreciate you letting me engage in conversation. It's always a pleasure. My last thing is, I don't think the solution, if stricter gun laws was the solution, the places like New York City with the strictest gun laws would have less murders. I don't believe they're correlated exactly, and I think the data show that what I'm saying is true. Stricter gun laws do not equate to less murders.
Okay.
That's all. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking my call. Enjoy the show.
Okay, thank you. Jay, how are you, my friend?
He can run back over to his phone.
Okay.
Uh-oh. He must have hung up.
Okay, all right.
Call
Jay.
back, Jay.
Call back, Jay, yeah.
We took the
Okay,
call.
that was you know what? You know that's the kind of call I like. A guy that has a different point of view, but an intelligent opinion, And I love a guy with an intelligent opinion when it's different than mine. Because I enjoy having a discussion with that kind of person.
And I'd just like to say something about some of the folks that call the show and they think they're doing something that having an effect on the show. When I answer to screen the call, they hang up, they slam the phone down. And that's not a way to have a discussion or a debate or even a conversation. That's just being a little spoiled brat. So put your thumb back in your mouth and go take a nap.
I think they're probably good and mad at me because I've talked to some people and they say, well, I get pretty mad at you sometime. I go, yeah, I know, and I know my opening statement probably made some folks really mad, but I really do feel that way.
You should have seen him before the show. He had the news
Yeah,
on.
right, yeah. Gee whiz, I'm just like, oh. And one of the things I prepared for tonight was about conflict resolution. Isn't that timely?
I'd say.
So
Resolving conflict.
I did some research, and I'm going to give you some of the ideas for resolving conflict. And this is a 6-step program for resolving conflict. The first step, stop fighting. Calm down and begin dialogue. So if you want to try to resolve conflict, that's the first step. Stop fighting, calm down, and begin dialogue. Second step, identity. Identify. Each person is allowed to identify the particular issue that's bothering them. The key is to be specific and try to resolve the larger issues. Don't get hung up on the smaller issues. And if at any point you want to call in and comment about some of these resolutions for resolving conflict, please feel free, 340-1590. So we have stop fighting, identify. Third one is discussion. Orderly and calm discussion. This can help lead to a conflict resolution. Listening is very important in the discussion process. And you have to have honest communication.
And always remember, we were created with 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should actually listen twice as much as we speak.
That's very true. Honest discussion is very important, and we're going to talk about that as we go along here, but you have to be willing to be honest. And to be honest, I understand, is to be vulnerable, and some people do not like the idea of being vulnerable. So we're going to stop fighting, identify, we're going to have a discussion, and then fourth, self-evaluation. This is a tough one. I happen to think, and there may be some, might have family members listening that would disagree with me. I happen to think I'm pretty good at that. I pretty much can look in the mirror and say, okay, Rudy Howard, you're a jerk about that, or I don't think you've done that very well, or you said that and maybe you shouldn't have said it. I think I'm pretty good about that. Speak in factual terms and do an honest assessment. How good are you at making an honest assessment? You know, I happen to think that's probably one of the toughest questions. When I was interviewing and I was still in corporate America, one of my number one questions I used to ask somebody is, who are you? Oh my God, I would get, first off, there would be usually a moment of silence because they wouldn't know exactly how to answer that.
You made them have to think, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's two things that are going on when you do that. Number one, they probably haven't given much thought about who they were. And number two, they're trying to put the strainer on and figure out how to tell you who they are without giving you information they don't want you to know. So you got two things taking place at the same time, which makes it difficult when it comes to that process. So we're going to stop fighting. We're going to identify. We're going to discuss. And then we're going to do self-evaluation. And the next one is compromise.
A little meet somebody halfway, you mean? Something like that, yeah.
Now, let me tell you why this is very interesting. There's a new thing going on in the conservative world where they talk about definites and absolutes. Compromise to conservatives has become a dirty word. Now, compromise is not winning or losing. Just get that in your mind. A compromise is not winning or losing. It is okay to register your feelings about the end result. You can register your feeling about the end results that came about from the compromise. But it's really important for you to understand the whole point of a compromise is not so that you can say you won or the other person say they lost. It is to come to an agreement that allows you to resolve the conflict.
And it does not entitle you to pound on your chest about it.
Right. Exactly. Okay, so now we've stopped the fighting. We have identified. We've had discussion. We had self-evaluation. We've had compromise, and now we want to have to continue the talk. You know, family is very important. So you want to continue the conversation, and one of the things you want to do, sometimes I don't do it as well. I'm going to admit myself, I don't think through thoroughly what I'm going to say before I open up my mouth and say it. I've gotten a lot better as I've gotten older, but sometimes it comes out of my mouth before I get a chance to catch it.
I thought everybody did that.
if you ever, I took public speaking my senior year of college, and if you ever watch Obama when he talks, he'll have these pregnant pauses. And what he's doing, the speech teacher taught us that most of people think when they pause, they have to make some kind of noise to fill the space.
What are you talking about?
Exactly. Whereas it's okay to pause if you're thinking. And if you watch him talk, I'm always so impressed to watch he'll pause, and it's almost like I can see his brain kicking into another gear because he's thinking about the words that are getting ready to come out of his mouth. And that's truly a talent. And that can probably, I know in my case, it probably could avoid some hard feelings when I go off at the mouth sometime. But like I said, I think I've gotten a lot better at that, but I still need improvement on that. Understand there may be a competition for time. You know, when you're dealing with a family problem, the problem could actually boil down to the fact that one party feels that you're taking another party's time away from them. That goes back to the self-evaluation part. Can you look at yourself and say, maybe I'm overreacting to the amount of time? Or conversely, am I demanding too much time from my family member? One or the other. Am I overreacting to the amount of time involved? Or am I demanding too much time from a family member? If all else fails, you may have to get third-party help. That might be of great value, is getting someone else outside of the situation to give you an honest assessment. Because sometimes, maybe, just maybe, you haven't been as honest with yourself as you could be. Therefore, trying to come to a resolution is pretty difficult. But those are the steps. Let me run through those steps for you one more time. And I think you should think about them. Here's the steps. Stop fighting. And identify, discussion, self-evaluation, compromise, and continue talks. And we got Steve. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, Rudy, between evaluating yourself and then compromising with the other party, my master's was, I have an MBA, and it was focused on human resources.
Okay.
And there was a very, very important book that I read many years ago while working on my master's. It was called Negotiating to Yes. And the one thing between those two parts right there was finding what you have in common. Yes, self-analyze. Look at yourself, and you have to be sincere about it.
Yes.
And once you do that, and once you look at your other side, then the next step that both of you have to take is to begin to find the things you have in common with each other.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
And once you start off on a positive note, finding out what you do have in common with each other, then you work from there. And that's where the hardest part begins. But at the outset, please, identify what you have in common before you start engaging in negotiation with each other.
Agreed.
Now,
I just want to throw a few little facts to you.
Okay.
The AR-15 is not an automatic rifle. It's a semi-automatic.
Yes, I know that. Yes, but go ahead.
Secondly, it originates from the name of the company, Armor Light, which was the first company to manufacture it.
Okay.
It's a semi-automatic. So is a carbine. A carbine is a semi-automatic. The AR-15 typically does not have 10 or 12 rounds. It typically has 30 rounds. Now you can take an M1, you can take a standard carbine today, and typically it will have a 10-round magazine, but you can also adapt it to 20 and 30 rounds, depending upon the magazine and who makes that magazine, if it's compatible with that specific brand name of rifle. So I just wanted to get that cleared up. It's one thing to hold back on the trigger and just let it all come out. That's an automatic. Classic example, World War II, the Browning automatic, BAR.
Right.
But typically today, I mean, if you want to go out and get an automatic rifle, it's going to take an awful lot to get there, to get to an automatic rifle. And there's going to be you're going to have to go through a lot of hoops to get to that.
Well,
now, there is one other thing out there that does exist that allows you to take a semi-automatic and convert it from semi to automatic. Maybe that's where you need to talk in regards to the number of rounds that you can give out.
That'd be like
now,
a bump
I know
stock.
this doesn't deal with the issue of, what's going on in terms of who's buying these weapons. And frankly speaking, being a teacher, I never, ever, ever wanted to even entertain the idea that teachers who are qualified, who have concealed carry, who know how to use a weapon, should be allowed to carry on campus. I've never, ever wanted that in my entire life because I would never want to have to be in that moment at that time. That's law enforcement. And, anyway, I just wanted to throw these things out there to you.
Well, no, hey, listen, I really appreciate that. So you feel my description of a resolution is pretty much spot on.
You're right on. It's just that, first of all, please find what you have in common. And right now, I mean, we all have one thing in common here. We don't want to see somebody walking into a doggone school and ending a lie. I mean, listen, as a teacher yesterday when I came home and I heard this and I saw this, I cried. I literally cried.
So did I.
I just could not believe it. And, this young man and what he did and how he was able to accomplish what he did, let's look at that in detail. And let's start with him as an example to begin how to prevent something like this ever happening anymore. Let's start right there with that. And one thing that I keep hearing an awful lot of is that a lot of these people who are guilty of these crimes, they seem to be communicating out there in social media.
Yes.
I wish there was some way, somehow, we could intercept this. I mean, I believe in privacy and the whole likes, but, I wish we could find a way to intercept these messages that are coming out in social media because, to the best of my understanding, almost every time something like this has happened, the perpetrator has always begun communicating in social media.
Well, Steve, let me tell you what I found out this morning. Each one of these last few perpetrators, they were on the watch list with the FBI. So the question has to be, I was talking to Greg about it before he left here to go home. The question has to be, if they were on the watch list and the FBI saw them as dangerous, how did they not get tagged?
That's one of the very, very, very good questions that needs to be answered.
Yes.
And needs to be incorporated into the process of finding solutions.
Yes, it does.
You and I totally agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, here's the thing that I get really aggravated with. I don't want to take anybody's gun. I don't want to take someone's gun. There's
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you know,
I'm sorry, but I do appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah. I know people that hunt, and I got no problem with that. I go to the range, a sportsman, and you go and you do a little target shooting. That's okay.
You just said something very important right there. A sportsman. I'm like you. I like to go to the range, and I just enjoy the sport of going to the range and firing my weapons at bullseyes, not at people, but at bullseyes. It's a matter of conquering a skill, so to speak.
And that's okay. I don't have any problem with that. But there's things that we can do, and this is my argument, there's things we can do to help make it safer.
And there's also something else that has just been exemplified here right now. You and I, despite many times having differences, we do agree on certain things. And tonight, on the issue of gun control, you and I found common ground.
Yes. Yes, we did.
Thank you, Rudy.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You have a good night.
You too. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Common ground and compromise. Now, are they the same thing, or are they a step towards the same thing?
I would think. I would say if you're able to come up with common ground, in essence, you came up with a compromise, or you came up with something that both parties can live with.
Right.
Because a lot of times with a compromise, and I'm going to say this, and I've said this many times before, I think this country is at our very best when you can take what comes from the right and what comes from the left, put it in a sauce, mix it up, and come out with a solution. Those solutions are usually pretty good.
And they usually include some balance.
Yes. Unfortunately, it's a total sum game now. It's either if I'm on the right, I have to win, or if I'm on the left, I have to win. That's not the way. That's not the design of our democracy. And I've had this argument on here many times. Our democracy was designed so that the best ideas win. The best ideas gain the most support from the people. That's the way our democracy was designed to work. If your idea is not winning the people, don't rig the system. Change the ideas so that you can find a way to attract the people to your point of view, which is exactly what the Democrats did. You got the formula. The Democrats were the racist KKK Dixiecrat party. They decided that they wanted to move more toward other people, the rest of the population. And they did so. And they pushed the Dixiecrats out, and they moved more to the center left, and all of the people that, like my father's age group, God rest his soul, who were Republicans became Democrats. There is no reason why, and I've said this ad nauseum, there is no reason why Republicans cannot attract African Americans, because African Americans are far more conservative than you think they are. is basically very conservative. And if you don't believe me, there is a book called What Color is a Conservative, written by J.C. Watts. And he in it, he details his upbringing, and he shows how his upbringing is consistent with a lot of what conservatives believe. Conservatives lose out when they do dumb stuff. Like there was the election was rigged. The average black person, they're not going along with that. They voting against Judge Jackson when she was more qualified than the last 3 Supreme Court justices nominated. That just does nothing but just make African Americans angry. They're not going to come to you when you do stuff like that. You can't win them like that. You can win African American people. Read that book, What Color is a Conservative, by J.C. Watts, and you'll learn a whole bunch about who African Americans are. Okay, I'm getting off of my soapbox now, but I hope you would pay heed to what I was saying about doing something about the guns, because there is just ridiculous that we can't do something. There's things that can be done to try to help make it a little bit safer for our little kids and adults. And I hope we can muster the courage to do it. At least tonight I was able to come to on common ground with Steve. He and I, after having some dialogue, came to common ground.
I've been seeing a lot of that on your show lately. Like I've said on a couple of previous shows, I think you're actually getting through.
Yeah, you're right. We have experienced it quite a bit recently here. I hope so. It's a lot of energy and effort put in to try to make it happen.
Oh, yeah.
But listen, I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in to the African American scene. God bless and be safe. And I will see you next Wednesday right here for the African Americans.
The African American scene has been brought to you by Martin County Roofing and independent insurance agent Rudy Howard, who ought to be feeling pretty good right now because, hey, he is getting through to a lot of the listeners of this show. I've noticed they've tamed it down. Okay, we got to go. This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast. Time right now is 7 o'clock.